Isha, welcome to the program, man. It's lovely to have
Thank you
you on
very
the
much.
show. I know you were really, really busy today, and it is an honor, honestly, to talk to you today. I came across with the interview you gave some time ago on the YouTube channel called Touching the Afterlife. And
Yes.
at that time, I was basically researching. I always do my study to come up with an idea, brainstorming myself with what kind of programs can I do to educate and enlighten the youth in my community.
Mm.
And when I heard your story, I was very much moved by it. And I thought, oh, I need to talk to Isha, man. He would change a lot of minds. People who are searching spirits, they'll be informed by his message for the
Mm.
betterment of their life. And that's what brought us here today. So,
No, honestly, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to
yes, yes. So, Isha, Isha Nemesis, is that how you say it? Nemesis? Is
Yeah,
that
so basically, so my name is Isha Chiramuta.
okay?
But Isha Nemesis was the name I used for a long time when I was working in entertainment.
All right.
So my first dance group, they got to the final of Britain's Got Talent back in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and it was called Nemisis. So I was always known to people as Isha Nemesis when I was choreographing or teaching classes or judging. So that's always been like the name. While I've been involved in entertainment, that's how everybody's known me.
Yeah.
So it's always stuck. It's got to the point where it's in my email, it's in so many different things. So but my actual name is Isha Chirumuta.
Okay. So Isha Chirumisa is African,
Yeah, Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Excellent. I'm
Yeah.
African as well. I'm Ethiopian. I've been
Ah,
living
okay.
here. I think you from your accent. I think you were born here. Yes.
No, so I was born in Harare,
Yeah.
but we moved to London when I was about 18 months old. So
Oh,
I was,
you
yeah, I
almost
was
born
a
here.
proper little baby when I came here. So yeah,
So
for the
do
most
you do
part, I
you
grew up
often
here.
go back to Africa, to Zimbabwe?
Not as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
My family last went, my parents went recently, actually. I think they went back in the last year.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's been a long time. It's been probably 15 years since the last time I managed to go back. So I was saying to my partner actually that me and her really need to take the kids and go back down there, check out
Okay.
Victoria Falls and everything down there. Yeah, it's amazing. It's a beautiful country. So I'd love to
So
go soon.
so growing up, which part of London you are you based in London at the moment? Which part of
Yeah,
London
so
did you grow up?
yeah, definitely. So I bounced around quite a bit. So I grew up in different parts of London. So I was in East London for a bit. I was in North London, well, Northeast London near Hackney, Finsbury Park, Seven Sisters. Most of our time was spent in Hendon, which is kind of like North London near Brent Cross.
Mhm.
And then when I was about 16 years old, we moved to Milton Keynes, which is just outside of London. And that's kind of where my entertainment journey really took off. Because before that, I had two goals. I wanted to be either like a professional footballer
Mhm.
or I wanted to be a rapper. Those are the two things that I was doing. Interestingly enough, actually, it's just dawned on me. Um, I remember when I first started doing my music because music was all I wanted to do at one point. And the name that I randomly popped into my head as the name I wanted to use was Red Dragon. And that was actually my name as a rapper for a long time. Um, Now, music kind of stepped aside when my choreography and dance work kind of took off. But I found it very interesting that for some reason at that point, that was the name that I chose.
Yeah,
Because correct me if I'm wrong,
we
yeah?
come back to that. We come back to that. I don't want
Yeah.
to because I want you
Warm
to
into
take
it.
us slowly because I mean when I want my viewers to feel exactly the same way I felt from the
Mm,
beginning. I want you to take us to the beginning when you were the child, because it's just I want the youngsters to learn from your story, and we
mm,
get to that in the end.
of
Um,
course.
so, tell me about your upbringing, your childhood. What led you to Britain Got Talent 2008? Before that,
Mm.
um, um, what was Isha like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've gone through so much change over a period of time. I feel like the human I am now is completely different to the person that I was even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I'd say. And that's what the Holy Spirit can do for you. But me kind of growing up, I was very on a, what's the best way to say it? I didn't really have any type of opinion when it came to religion. One of the earliest things that I remember when it came to religion was I was in Sunday school, and I remember that I didn't really enjoy it. I know I mentioned in my other video on Touching the Afterlife that I never enjoyed going to church. So my parents kind of enlisted me into Sunday school. And again, I didn't really enjoy it. But one thing that they did to try and convince me that God exists is we did a little survey in Sunday school, and they asked us to fill in a form. I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old, right? And they basically said, okay, write down things that you like and that you'd really want. And I wrote them down. And a week later, one of them was Pogs. I don't know if you remember Pogs back in the day. Those little
Yeah.
round cards.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it was like the precursor to like Pokemon cards. I used to love Pogs, and I was like, oh, I'd really love to get a pack of Pogs. A week later, my parents randomly bought some for me. They're like, oh, here you go. And I was like, how did they know? But obviously, this was set up, right? Like they told my parents what I wrote down, and they went to pick something up to help convince me of what I was doing there, right? But I was a little bit wily. It dawned on me after about 2 weeks, and I was like, this is amazing. Then it dawned on me, and I was like, hold on a minute. I wrote a form at Sunday school, and I said I wanted Pogs, and a week later they bought me some. So even as a child, I clocked very quickly, and I was like, so that's how they found out. This wasn't any divine intervention or something that I was led to believe. It is what it is, like any parent would do for the child, right? So in a weird way, that pushed me away a bit, because I'm automatically thinking this is fake. Like they're trying to tell me this is what it is, but this is not what it is. So my whole concept of God was already kind of skewed and a bit set aside at that point. So I was a little bit kind of I'll say more lost than I was. And it's no fault to my parents or anything like that. And I would do the same for my kids. But because of where I was, I do believe the journey I went through, I was supposed to go through. And that was already determined. So I don't lay any fault on anything on family or friends or anything like that, because I've taken every decision. And my route has led me here, ultimately saved and helping other people avoid the darkness. So I was supposed to go through those things. So there's no blame whatsoever. But that was one of the things that kind of set me away. And I used to go to the Church of England. I know I made the mistake on my other video when I said it was Catholic. In my head, I knew it's not a Catholic church. I knew that. But I was leading on to another point, and I was trying to get everything together into one cohesive story because there's so many things. But yeah, it wasn't a Catholic church, but it was a church that I didn't enjoy. Something inside my spirit was just saying, this is not for you. And I didn't enjoy it at all. So that pushed me away from any ideology or any religious ideology. Automatically at that point, I was feeling set aside and separated from. Yeah, so before even this had happened, now I would say probably my first spiritual encounter, I was probably about 4 years old. One of my earliest memories, if not my earliest foundation memory that I say for a fact, was something that happened. We lived in a flat. I believe this was in like Baker Street sort of area. And I locked myself into my parents' bedroom. I don't know how I did it, but no one could get in. And they had to call the fire brigade out to actually take the door off, because I think where the hinges are, they're on the other side. So you can't actually access them to remove the door. So they had to get the fire brigade to actually take the door off. So I was in that room for probably 2 or 3 hours. I remember my brother and sister were giving me digestive biscuits under the door to try and feed me because I was hungry. Bit of a cute memory. And I remember when the fire brigade came, they said to me, please move away from the door, maybe get into the bed so you're safe. So I got into the bed, and obviously I'm 4 years old. It's like a king size bed. I remember going under the covers, and I was crawling from where the pillows are to the bottom. And I remember just crawling, and about halfway, I it's hard to explain, but I saw something coming the other way towards me, and it stopped. And it was like, it looked like a child, similar age to me, maybe slightly older, like palish skin, almost translucent, with black eyes and like shortish black matted hair, like you'd expect on a newborn baby and have like the matted hair when they're born, if they have any. Similar like that. And it just stopped, and it looked at me, and we looked straight in each other's eyes. To tell you the truth, I don't remember feeling any fear when I saw this thing, but I was 4 years old. So I'm not particularly surprised. And it just looked at me, I looked at it, it went kind of like that way, I went this way, and we just crawled past each other. And that was like one of the first spiritual encounters that I've ever had.
Wow.
And it kind of tells me something, that maybe there's a spiritual doorway that's been open for a very long time that allowed the spiritual world access. There probably are special circumstances where God would allow that in somebody's life in order to use them for a particular message, or particular ends, for his kingdom. I feel like it's very possible there was some kind of door open prior to me at some point. As we know with generational curses, people can feel that 10 generations down and more. Technically, sin is a generational curse from Adam and Eve that we all feel.
That's
so
true.
that I had the sense that, okay, this is a door's open here, and it's not a good door. So that was the first time I kind of encountered this. And throughout my childhood, from an early age right up until my teenage years, or say early teenage years, I had a situation where I was having nightmares every single night. At one point, it was probably for about 6 months. Every night without fail, it was a nightmare. And it was the same sort of scenario. It was either, well, it was actually weird. It was like 3 different types of situations I always seem to find myself in. There was one where there was a city where it would start like a dream. I'm in this city.
Yeah.
And then it would turn into I'm being chased by a demonic entity in the dream and I have to run away. But it got to the point I had these dreams so many times that I would pop up in different parts of the city. And it got to the point where I would know my way around the city from a different dream because I've dreamt about it before. So I'll be like, oh, I know this bit because in a previous dream, I was in the chicken shop around the corner and I'll walk around and everything's the same. So it was almost like a complete city in my dream. And eventually I just knew where I was, but it always turned dark halfway through, then turned into a nightmare where I'm running away.
Yeah.
That was one that repeated quite a lot. A second one that repeated was my home in Hendon. I kept having this repeated dream where all the lights are off in the house and I'm upstairs in my room, the door's open. And I know there is a spirit, like a demonic entity in the living room right below me. But if I run down the stairs, I could probably beat it to the door. And I would have this routine. I would run down, run out the front door. And the way the street is, it's like a U-bend, like kind of like that. And my house is right in the middle. And on this side over here is like a motorway. It's called the Great North Way. I believe it's the A1. And that goes down towards Camden, past Finchley Road, and then up towards Edgware. So it's a big road. And my routine was I just need to run down to that road, like around the U-bend, and then basically down to the main road where there's lots of cars, people will see me, and then you're safe. And the routine in the dream is I get out to the street, I go around the U-bend. When I get to about here, I turn around and I see this dark shadow come out the house and it's following me. And then all of a sudden I can't run. I'm like trying to run, but I'm going at like 2 miles an hour. Like lots of people would feel in these sort of encounters. And I'm doing my best to get away. And at first, I used to wake up kind of halfway down. Then it got to a point where I would make it to the road, but this thing would keep chasing me. And through other encounters I was having, I realized actually, if I can find a way to kill myself in the dream, it will wake me up. And then I can wake up and escape it. So my new routine was then, right, if I could run into the middle of the road and get hit by a car, I'll wake up. And that became the new routine. Then they realized that this was the way out. And they changed it. So this recurring dream kept coming back and I'd run into the road and all of a sudden there's no cars. There'll be like one car here, one car there, and they're going around me. So it's almost like it was learning. It was like, you're not getting out that way. Almost like in the Matrix, you know, when they have to use like some sort of exit to get out. And then they try and change it. It was like that. So then I'm like, right.
Or like a meta universe, like a Facebook meta universe.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like they're coding and they're just changing it as they go. And that's how it felt. And they were finding new ways to keep me in these dreams. And then what they then changed was I would have a dream and then I would feel like I've woken up. And I'm in my bed, everything's normal, which was like early astral projection for me, because that's what happens when your spirit leaves your body. You can see yourself sleeping, you can see your room as it is. And I'd get up and I'm like, okay, this is great. And then I realize something's not right. And then one of these entities starts approaching. And this feeling of fear that you get is paralyzing. It's indescribable. And sometimes you can't even talk because you're so scared just in the presence of them because of their aura.
Well, is it like just in your dream, or sometimes they just like come vividly? Like,
in the dream.
In the dream. Okay.
You can feel them.
Yeah.
But it's a tough one for me because when you think of it and say this is a dream, people in their mind automatically think, oh, that's just like a normal dream, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone has them.
Yeah.
It's normal. But what they don't understand
Yeah.
is you, I mean, prophets had visions in their dreams and God
Yeah.
came to them. That's not just a dream, that's a vision, but it
Yeah.
happens while you're dreaming. It's
Yeah.
a similar concept to when you're faced with these demonic entities. Your
Yeah.
spirit actually leaves your body. So
Wow.
that is more real than what's happening in the physical world, because the spiritual world is essentially where you come from. So
Yeah.
that is really where you come from. So when you're there, everything's heightened. Your sense of smell, your eyesight, your hearing, everything is completely heightened. It feels more real there than it does here. So the
Wow.
sense of fear is also heightened because it's so much worse, and it's like your spirit knows
Yeah.
everything,
Hmm.
and you have a sense of knowing when your spirit is separated.
Yeah.
You just seem to know things, and information can immediately download into your head. You just
Yeah.
know, which is why they say a lot of people in heaven will know each other.
Yeah.
In a lot of testimonies I've seen, people just have this sense of knowing because your spirit knows. So yeah, it's
So,
terrible, and
yeah, I'm sure as a child, especially, it must have been very frightening and it must have been very terrible for you. I mean, and it was very frequent, like you described. Was there
yeah,
instances that, I mean, it got to a point where you have to tell your mom, for example, or
yeah,
yeah?
yeah, it got bad. So it got to the stage where it started to affect me mentally.
Hmm.
I wasn't functioning normally. I wasn't the same person, I don't think, as I was. I
Yeah.
spoke to my parents about it, but I think they viewed it as dreams. So it's like, okay, we figured out a pattern that when I sleep on my back, I automatically have an attack.
Hmm.
So I started sleeping on my side, and that helped. But sometimes I would know that in my dream I've rolled onto my back because I can feel the dream changing into a demonic attack,
Hmm.
and then I'd wake up and I'm on my back, and I would know that that's when it happened. So
Yeah.
it was a bit weird. Then it got to the point they were just attacking me regardless of how I'm laying. But it
Yeah.
was worse when I lay on my flat on my back for some
Yeah.
reason.
Hmm.
And it got to the point it was so bad. I was terrified of the dark. Terrified. It got to the point where walking home from school in winter was tough
Yeah.
because we lived right by a park and it's very poorly lit. At
Hmm.
the top of the park is where the Church of England is and a graveyard.
Hmm.
And I had to walk through that with zero light every day on the way home from school. And it used to terrify me beyond belief because of all these attacks that I kept having. And I knew that these things were around me to enhance that fear because they have these spirits that all they would do is make you feel a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And they were just throwing fearful thoughts into me and giving me all of these negative energies about anything they possibly could. And just that walk home was horrible. Being at home at night when I turn the light off to get into bed, I would turn it off and run into bed to get there as quick as I humanly could, because I at this point I didn't realize I was astral projecting or anything or having these encounters. I
Yeah.
just saw it as terrible nightmares.
Hmm.
So sometimes I would be like, I don't even know if I'm asleep or awake because if the room is dark, you
Hmm.
don't notice the time at which you separate.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just like, okay, I'm fine. And the next thing you know, it's an attack. And they can pull you right out of your body while you're trying to sleep. And if you don't know, you wouldn't even realize it's happened. But later down the line, I realized what it was and I got used to it. I won't say I got used to it, but I understood it better.
Hmm.
But at that point, it was shocking. And I was having multiple attacks a night. I would have like a dream sequence, would have one nightmare, and then it would
Yeah.
move straight into another one, straight into another one. And it would just hit me like that. And it got to the point where I had an issue where I was like 7 or 8 years old and I was still wet in the bed because I was terrified to get out of bed to go to the toilet
Hmm.
because of the dark.
Yeah.
Uh, and then to help solve that problem, I used to stash like 1.5 liter Coke bottles that were empty in my cupboard. So if I was really desperate, I could pull that out and use that and jump back into bed because I
Hmm.
would not leave. I would just stay there. It was that serious. Um, and there was one turning point where um, I don't know if it was an attack or a dream, but I think it was probably an attack. But I remember I was walking down this long winding path from my primary school,
Hmm.
and there was lots of parents and kids walking around, and I was walking out, and I saw this demonic looking entity walking up the path towards me,
Yeah.
and I again had that sense of fear, and it was horrible. And then at this point, I just exploded, and I was absolutely cussing at this thing. I was shouting, telling it because I think something twigged in my head because I remember was very specifically in this dream. It was actually, now I think about it, it's quite funny. There were these two guys that walk in front of me, and they were look like bodybuilders. They were massive, and
Yeah.
they were walking down the path. and this thing just walked around them, and that's where I snapped. So I was like, hold on a minute, I am like 120 pounds of absolutely nothing at this point.
Yeah.
You got these massive guys. If you're gonna eat someone, there you
Yeah.
go. You just walk past them and come after me. That logical part of my brain said something is not right about this scene. And that's when I went mad and I attacked them. And I was like, you leave them, you come after me. I
Yeah.
was shouting. And then I just woke up and the thing just left me alone. And I was like, okay, this might be a bit of a turning point.
Yeah.
Evidently, it wasn't a turning point, but yeah, it was tough.
So you kind of like developed a way to deal with them basically as you grow along.
A little bit, but they kept attacking. It just became
Yeah.
less frequent. So I think they started attacking in different ways. So after that, I
Yeah.
then had, because they can attack you spiritually and physically as well.
Hmm.
And I got attacked physically for sure. I
Yeah.
developed this allergy, this rash that used to appear all over my body.
Yeah.
And it was so bad. I spent my 16th birthday in hospital,
Wow.
and it started like I'd get this rash maybe once in 3 months. And it got to a
Yeah.
point where after a couple of years, every single day I had these like lumps all over me. And when I tell you, like some of them were like half a tennis ball. Imagine that on your
Wow.
body, all over,
Wow.
you're covered. I had it on my face, on my arms, on my stomach, chest, back, legs, everywhere. Everywhere. Even in my lips, they used to swell as well. It was bad. Eyelids, and it was itchy. Like it was that level of itchy where I would actually want to start bleeding to,
Yeah.
because I'd rather feel pain than that
Yeah.
itch.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I got introduced to calamine lotion. I
Okay.
used to get it in bucket loads and fill the bath and
Yeah.
like cover myself. And that was one of the few things that even remotely helped.
Yeah.
I went to Guy's Thomas Hospital for that and did every test under the sun.
Yeah.
Everything came back clear. There was not one doctor that found out what was wrong with me. And
Yeah.
I was having this at this point every single day. I had it covering my body and it was horrific. It was shocking. Um, and yeah, it got to the point where my parents were so desperate because it started to affect my throat. My throat would swell up and I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And yeah, we narrowed down my diet. It wasn't that. We narrowed down drink. Wasn't that. Fabrics. What are we using for the laundry? Everything you can imagine. Nothing. It was nothing. There was no
Yeah.
root cause. Now I look back and I think it's very likely I was being attacked spiritually, but I didn't
So
know.
it's spiritually, physically as well. This is a physical attack, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would manifest.
Yeah.
It would manifest like that. And one thing that confounded my feeling when it comes to that kind of attack
Yeah.
was James Kay, who did his interview where he was married to a witch on the day he was born.
Yeah, after you talked about it on the actual interview, I went and listened to
Mm,
him. It was very interesting. Yeah, I
it
would
was,
recommend my viewers as well. Probably,
oh, it's so
yeah,
powerful.
I drop a link. Yeah, in the description. Yeah, for them. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just it's a very moving story he has. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It answered some questions for me. And it came at a time where I had an attack and I was asking God, and I was praying,
yeah,
what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? And this interview popped up and it answered a lot of questions and convicted me of things that I knew I wasn't doing correctly.
yeah,
And that changed a lot. But one thing he spoke about in that, when he was talking about how he was hired to break the covenant of the priest and I think it was 19 women
yeah,
who were going to pray 6 hours every day for 3 months.
yeah,
And one of the things they did to stop the priest is the demonic entities prayed sickness on his daughter. So she was up at night. So he couldn't sleep. And therefore he was struggling to keep up in the day to do
yeah.
his prayer. So they actually attacked the daughter physically with illness to prevent him from doing his prayer. So they
Hmm.
can attack you that way. They will go after your health. And I
Yes.
do feel that is what happened with me,
Yeah.
that they went after my health because the dreams weren't doing enough to push me over the edge. Because what they do is they try and hurt you to a point you start searching for answers wherever you
Exactly.
find it. And then
Yeah.
they'll give you pathways to find it, which is what happened to me subsequently.
Yeah.
And that's how I then transitioned from atheist into the new age.
So,
Um,
in the beginning, you were atheist. Until what age were you stayed atheist?
I would say where the new age started,
Yeah.
I'd say I'd say after Britain's Got Talent, maybe I was about 19 years old is when
Until
I
then, you stayed atheist. Your parents they believed in God, and from the interview I heard, I think your mom used to go to church and she used to pray.
yeah,
How come you were not influenced by that when you were
two
young?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, two things. For
Yeah.
me, I was 100% in the world. I just had no interest in anything even remotely religious.
Uh-huh.
I think this is the attack of the spirits just gave me no interest in it whatsoever.
I see.
To the point I actually hated it. The idea of religion, I was like, why? It's just constricting, it's ruining people's happiness. I had this
Yeah.
image of people who are like Christian and stuff like that as the most boring people you ever want to spend your time with. You can't have fun, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Um, and that concept just played in my mind. And then I was at the point where I was like, do you know what? I want to see some physical proof. If I don't see
Hmm.
physical proof, like Jesus himself shows up on the cloud in front of me, and hands me a halo, then I'm not going to believe it. And that was my mindset, which is
Hmm.
quite stupid when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. A lot of people try to live their life with absolutes, and they say, I'm not going to trust that unless there is physical proof or 100% proof.
Yeah.
And the best argument I've seen to debunk that really was Steve Nettle,
Hmm.
where somebody said the same thing to him and he discussed it and he said, okay, when you get a prescription from the doctor to get medicine,
Hmm.
do you get a pharmacy kit and test the medicine to make sure that it hasn't got poison in it? And she was like, well, no, I don't. And he was like, then how do you know they've not done that?
Hmm.
And long answer is you don't know. So you
Hmm.
can't say you live your life in absolutes, even here. It's
Hmm.
impossible.
Hmm.
And so why would you apply the same standard to God?
Hmm.
You can't do that. And that's where an element of faith comes in. In the same way, you'll have faith that your partner is cooking you a meal that doesn't have arsenic in it.
Hmm.
You're not going to test it. You have that faith that it's going to be that way. In the
That's
same
true.
way, we have faith that
Mhm.
Jesus will see us coming through the pearly gates and say, well done, my child, rather than depart from me, I never knew you. It's the
Mhm.
similar concept. It's just something that people don't want to have.
Mhm.
But most people don't want to have any concept of God because they're far too comfortable in their sin. So the people that are most aggy when it comes to any type of religion are the people that know that they know the word. Their
Mhm.
spirit knows that you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be in that club. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. But they
Mhm.
love their sin more than they love God. So they will
Mhm.
make
Mhm.
any argument, no matter how stupid it is, against the idea of God
Mhm.
because they would rather live in sin and
Mhm.
they don't want to have anybody telling them or making them feel bad about
Mhm.
dating loads of people or
Mhm.
doing this and doing that.
Mhm.
That's the main reason why people don't like the idea of God. And if they're honest with themselves, especially people
Yeah.
watching now, they will say the same thing. If
Yeah.
you take away the idea, or if God said you can continue living your current lifestyle right now,
Mhm.
would you be more interested in reading the Bible and getting to know Him? I
Mhm.
guarantee you they'll be like, yeah, we'll be far more interested because we don't have to change anything. But the
Exactly.
idea of having to
Mhm.
change parts of their life that they like
Yeah.
is more painful to them than the idea of hell. And that's because
Mhm.
they don't know hell either. Because if they
Exactly.
did, they would have choices to make. So yeah, it's
So
a shame.
how did you move from being an atheist and a non-believer
Mm,
who is to question even the existence of God, which is
mm,
the basic the concept of God? You even didn't even want to go that path completely, even though
mm.
your parents were religious. So how did you transition from this one to the other one?
Yeah, so this was a long time in the making. I believe I was kind of being pushed in that direction because I was pushed away from religion.
Hmm.
One thing about the satanic religions is they're very, very accepting. They will
Hmm.
accept anyone and everything because, like the Bible says, the way to me is narrow and very few shall find it. The
Hmm.
opposite can be said about Lucifer. His belief systems are open to everybody to come and join. Don't worry about anything. Like Aleister Crowley said, do what thou wilt. Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean? And Jay-Z ironically wears
Yeah.
that on his t-shirts.
Yeah.
Make of that what you will.
Yeah. I've seen
But
that. Yeah.
Satan is very accepting because he wants as many people to go to hell with him as possible.
Hmm.
So it's easy to follow his concepts and his mindsets, right?
Hmm.
But he stays very close to the truth and then
Hmm.
just bends 10%. And that's why
Hmm.
people fall for it because your spirit knows truth. So automatically you see things and think that's true. But then the tiny little twist is what leads you to him rather than God.
Hmm.
And when I done Britain's Got Talent and my group were then doing quite well, we were touring,
Hmm.
and I was then around these people who are really heavy into this sort
I
of thing.
see. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So it starts to shape you. And one thing I've noticed about entertainment is it is very satanic. The
Hmm.
ideologies that people carry in entertainment are very satanic.
Yeah.
Now it's become very common for people to take drugs in order to connect to higher beings and spirits.
Hmm.
Even a concept that people use in dance called flow state.